Have you ever wondered what made President John Fitzgerald Kennedy say that the United States would reach the moon before the 1960 decade closed? It is questions like these that Mrs. O'Neill challenges her third-grade students with. There is no other student in her class quite like Oliver Olson. Poor Oliver has obsessive parents that are extremely cautious about everything he does. Oliver started kindergarten a year late because of an illness, and since that time his parents have taken precaution to make sure that Oliver eats an organic, healthy diet, practices every aspect of pristine hygiene, and receives the best grades possible with parent intervention. How Oliver Olson changed the world begins with Mrs. O'Neill, a third-grade teacher, introducing the topic of the Milky Way planets to her class. After Mrs. O'Neill tells her students that a man did walk on the moon before the 1960s ended, she tells her students that one idea can change the world, such as President Kennedy's idea. Mrs. O'Neill told her students later on that a senator is coming to visit their school. She tells her students that they will have the opportunity to share with the senator an idea of something they think could be made into a law. As the students receive this news and are introduced to their new unit, Mrs. O'Neill assigns her students to make a diorama of the solar system, and they have the opportunity to work with a partner. Once Oliver's parents find out that Oliver's project, they completely take over the work that should be done by Oliver. Over the next few days in class, as Mrs. O'Neill discusses possible ideas her students will write about to the senator, Oliver ends up getting assigned to work with Crystal, a very chatty and bossy classmate that sits next to Oliver. Without Oliver's permission, Crystal tells Mrs. O'Neill that her and Oliver will be working together. Oliver reluctantly tells his parents that he was forced into working with Crystal without a say in the matter, and they miraculously allow Oliver to work with Crystal on the science project instead of doing the project for him. As Oliver and Crystal work together on the assignment, Oliver comes up with a brilliant idea about how to include Pluto in the solar system. Mrs. O'Neill told her class that Pluto is not considered a planet for several reasons. This upsets Crystal, and she insists that her and Oliver somehow incorporate Pluto within their diorama of the solar system, while stating a message that scientists who decided Pluto should not be a planet are wrong. At this point in the story, Oliver begins to realize that he is capable of thinking for himself despite the years his parents have thought for him. On the day that the senator comes to the school, she tells the boys and girls that they came up with wonderful ideas for new laws, but many of the ideas are for the national or the local body of legislators to decide. However, the senator does state that one student's idea stood out to her. The name of the student, Oliver Olson. Oliver was shocked to hear this because the only idea he remembered submitting is the one his mother gave him about banning U-turns in the school parking lot. He did not submit the idea that parents should not be allowed to do their children's homework. Oliver had shared this idea with Crystal, and she took the liberty to submit the idea to the senator in his name. After Oliver's parents learned this, they were incredibly proud of their son for being recognized and for the grade he received on his diorama. Oliver persuaded them to allow him to attend the third-grade space sleepover in order to celebrate the end of the unit. Oliver and his parents finally come to an understanding about Oliver doing his own work. How Oliver Olson Changed the World by Claudia Mills is an inspiring page-turning story that young children will enjoy about a young boy who learns about the power and believing in oneself. Claudia Mills has written for decades that started when she was a young child. Children will find themselves loving and relating to the characters that Mills creates in her stories. Not only is this story educational as it discusses history and scientific facts about the Milky Way planets, but it will also inspire children to begin thinking about their own ideas that could possibly change the world. How Oliver Olson Changed the World is a realistic fiction book that will force readers to smile, laugh, think, imagine, and achieve. Read it and allow the world-changing ideas to begin.